I call Brett Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's an absolute joy to rise in support of the Standards and Accreditation Bill in its second reading. Particularly so because we've heard some very divergent views tonight. A lot of sound, rational argument from this side of the House, from people whom I was fortunate enough to sit on the Select Committee with. But the other side, I have to say, Mr Speaker, I'm not completely certain that they were actually at the same hearings that I was. Along with the submissions we heard, we also got a very extensive set of reports from the department, and it really strikes me, sir, that the two members opposite that have spoken to date just really either didn't read or grasp that report. Now, I'll get to that. But before we get there, I think it's important to remind ourselves of why we're even looking at this bill, because we're not creating legislation for the sake of it. And this forms part, sir, of this government's plan to grow the New Zealand economy through our business growth agenda, particularly the parts that are about structures, processes and supports to help businesses grow and to compete both at home and indeed abroad. And standards, sir, improve the effectiveness, safety and reliability of many goods and services that are used by consumers and businesses every day throughout our economy. And the proposed changes are aimed at ensuring that our standard system is well functioning and is meeting the needs of today and into the future. In particular, in supporting our business growth agenda, there are two key points, sir. A well-managed standard system builds innovation by facilitating the creation and diffusion of technology by codifying technical excellence. And secondly, the changes that we are proposing support exports by preserving New Zealand's connections to international standards organisations and ensuring that international expectations are met. So let us for a moment, sir, just turn to what the key changes of this bill are. Firstly, we are proposing a new standards board with statutory independence that will be responsible for reviewing and approving standards. Likewise, we are proposing a standards executive, again who is statutory independent, who will be independent of the organisation that he or she resides in, but will be to help foster collaboration and alignment with the growth plans across our economy, and particularly also with the Building and Construction Centre. They will be based, sir, within the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. But they will, like the board, have statutory independence. In addition, we will have independent standards development committees, and those committees will include industry and technical experts, consumer representatives, and regulators. We'll also amend the Copyright Act to ensure that we protect intellectual property both within New Zealand, but particularly, as one speaker noted, Standards Australia, who raised a very, very important point with us during the Select Committee hearing. In the Select Committee hearing, sir, we received 21 submissions, 13 of which we heard in person or by teleconference, and a number of issues were raised. And I'd like to cover some of those. The issue of independence, raised by many that by having these functions, particularly the standards executive residing within MB, that somehow that might lead to influence, undue influence from the government department, the ministry, on them and erode their true independence nature. Well, sir, quite frankly, there is nothing more powerful in terms of independence that this Parliament can confer on any individual or anybody than statutory independence, which is precisely what both the Standards Board and the Standards Executive will have under the proposed legislation. Now, sir, even more important than that simple piece of legislative fact is evidence. Now, I've spent over 20 years prior to entering Parliament in corporate company environments, commercial world, and in the information and communications technology business, most of those years, sir, with fairly large companies or multinationals. And I can tell you, if you want to do your level best to make true collaboration or influence tougher, then put someone in the same large company with a separate reporting line. And it's as tough as you can imagine to get quite the level of cooperation and collaboration that company and their shareholders would like. Now, that's a bit flippant, sir, but if you were to ask these businesses out there in the commercial world, they would agree. They are of such a size and a complexity they need to have the structures they do, but they would be the first to admit, sir, that those structures cause challenges when it comes to working together effectively for the one objective that that company might have. So that experience, for one, sir, would say that actually putting the executive at MB doesn't actually immediately mean there's any erosion of their independence at all. But even more so, sir, even more so than the anecdotal experience of one member of this House, how about the real-world example of MB itself? Because within MB, we have 3 other individuals or groups in the same situation. So we have the Registrar of Companies, we have the Commissioner of Patents, and we have the official assignee. Each of them with their independence, each of them resident within MB, and not a single suggestion from a member of this House or anyone submitting that in any way their residence within MB has in any way compromised their independence. The facts of the real-world situation show us with absolute clarity that the mere fact they are resident within the ministry does not automatically mean that there's any erosion of independence. And when I've been hearing the members opposite speak and thinking of the examples I just cited, sir, it sprung, to paraphrase Daniel Patrick Moynihan, they are entitled to their opinion, sir, but not their own facts. So another area of problem or problematic area that was raised around this from these submitters was stakeholder representation. And now this is being met, sir, through the appointment of relevant individuals to standards development committees. And within that, there was a question of conflicts of interest, particularly if you have people from the industry serving on these committees. Now, the argument is, and the way the bill is currently structured, is that if you wish to have the best possible standards development committee for the standard that is being developed or amended or reviewed, then you need the flexibility to appoint the very best and most experienced of people from a range of areas. It could be academic, it could be industry, it could be consumer. There are any number of groups and individuals that might be relevant for a particular standard. So in actual fact, by incorporating the flexibility we have, we actually allow for the committee to comprise the best possible members, while giving the standards executive in particular, in proposing those people, the ability to manage conflicts of interest. And we need industry experts on board, sir, people with real-world working knowledge around the standards that they are creating or that they may be reviewing. If you have a blanket restriction, simply, for instance, if they happen to be an owner of a company that might be seen to benefit in some way from a standard because they're in that industry, or in the case of the masters of the people opposite the CTU who said that even if you were an employee of a company in the industry, you should be excluded, then all you're really doing, sir, is constraining the quality of experience that you can actually have on the committee. You're basically setting yourself up, sir, not you, setting oneself up for less suboptimal standards to be created. And it's quite stunning, sir, that it was even mooted in the first place. The other one that they raised here was that stakeholders should nominate members of the Standards Development Committee. Well, and again, a flexible and better way of addressing that is that by making the standards executive having to engage with industry and stakeholder groups to identify suitable experts, that allows for the most relevant, the most appropriate people to be on board. And we can ensure, sir, that they will engage with those groups, because in order for a standard to be approved or amended, the standards board must approve it. And the standards board is required, and I will quote here from the departmental report, to have regard to importance of ensuring that membership constitutes a balanced representation of interests relevant to the proposed draft standard. So just because the standards executive can propose the members of the committee, the governance role of the board ensures that if the standard is to be approved, the executive will have to engage with the right groups, whether they're industry, whether they're consumer representatives, no matter who they might be. And I'll finish up with the objections raised, sir, with the Standards Australia, who raised an issue. 82% of current New Zealand standards are jointly developed with Australia and New Zealand, and the rules as they were drafted would harm their IP. So what we have done is made sure that that intellectual property will be preserved and our links with the Standards Australia will continue. Sir, I commend this bill to the House.